Hello, everyone. This is Inside the Americas, the headlines. As the New York subway is rocked by a rush hour shooting, we'll look at Joe Biden's latest executive move to try and boost gun control. Then American red states this week kept pushing their anti-abortion agenda. We'll take you to El Salvador, one of just 5 countries where abortion is prohibited completely, and women mourning lost babies often end up in jail. And in Brazil, some 3 million people live off the administrative grid with no ID whatsoever. You'll meet these ghost citizen activists are trying to help organize to vote in the election this fall. I'm Jeannie Godula. Our image of the week is this one: people running from a smoke-filled New York City subway train, desperately trying to get away from a shooter on board who opened fire during the busy morning rush hour, an attack that left some 20 people hurt. The shooting came as Joe Biden made another move to try and boost gun control in the U.S. The president has made that a key part of his term in office. And this week, he announced new measures cracking down on so-called ghost guns, those difficult-to-trace weapons that can be assembled at home. Biden's new executive order boosts restrictions on ghost guns that have increased tenfold over the last 5 years.
It is now my great honor to introduce the strongest gun sense commander-in-chief ever to hold office.
Mia Tretta is a survivor. Back in 2019, a fellow student at her California high school opened fire, killing at least 2. The shooter used a ghost gun. Unregistered and untraceable, they can be assembled from a kit at home, and President Joe Biden is now looking to crack down on them.
Today, the United States Department of Justice is making it illegal for a business to manufacture one of these kits without a serial number. Illegal.
The Biden administration's new rule requires gun kit manufacturers to include a serial number on key components, and dealers selling such kits will now have to conduct background checks on prospective buyers to verify criminal and psychiatric history. Last year, some 20,000 ghost guns were recovered by law enforcement, a tenfold increase from 2016, according to the White House. Gun rights groups, however, have opposed the measure. The powerful National Rifle Association has called it hollow, saying it will only hearten Biden's wealthy gun control supporters while failing to stop violent criminals. Biden says he doesn't oppose the right to bear arms as allowed for in the Second Amendment to the Constitution, but he has called for more regulation, urging Congress to take action so as to codify the measure.
He was hoping Congress would act on this measure in the past year or so. It's pretty clear Congress will not, or that it would be too heavy a lift to try and have Congress get this done. So he decided to craft an administrative rule to get it done instead. Opponents have already announced that they're going to take this matter to court and try and prevent the enactment of the measure by filing suits against it. And that raises the one question about it, which is he's doing it by an administrative regulation issued autonomously by the president. And while he probably has the power to do it, there is enough question about this new restriction that it at least provides a basis for a legal action by gun rights opponents who don't want to see any new gun laws.
The Biden administration has described the country's gun violence as an epidemic. This year alone, nearly 12,000 people have died by firearms, including by suicides. Last year, the figure reached 45,000, according to the organization Gun Violence Archive.
Abortion is another hot-button issue in the U.S., and there are still lots of questions being asked in Texas this week after a judge formally dismissed a murder charge against a woman for trying to induce her own abortion. The woman was indicted in March after she miscarried and allegedly told hospital staff she had tried to abort the baby. The staff then reported her to the police. Now, Texas law bans abortion providers from performing the procedure after about 6 weeks into pregnancy. But the law also says that a woman who ends her own pregnancy cannot be charged with a crime. So abortion rights activists are up in arms as to just why prosecutors were able to file murder charges in the first place. Red states are pushing to scale back abortion rights across the U.S. This week, the governor of Oklahoma signed a bill into law making it a felony to perform an abortion, punishable by up to 10 years in prison. Now, El Salvador is one of the 5 countries in the world where abortion is completely prohibited, even in cases of rape or danger to the life of the mother. Only Nicaragua, the Dominican Republic, Malta, and the Vatican have as restrictive laws. In El Salvador, though, women are being arrested in hospitals and sentenced to up to 30 years in jail. But a recent decision by the Inter-American Court of Human Rights could give these women new hope.
Karen's pregnancy turned into a nightmare. She was only 21 and was expecting her second child when she passed out at home.
When I woke up, I was handcuffed to a stretcher and surrounded by policemen. They were saying, "Why did you do that?" They were accusing me. I could only answer, "What happened? Where is my baby?"
She was taken directly from hospital to prison, where she served 7 of the 30 years of her sentence before being released last December. During her trial, doctors and a policeman accused her of having an abortion.
We are judged starting at the hospital. That's where our trial begins. From there, we are taken away from our families, our children. They don't even let us defend ourselves. They don't listen to us.
El Salvador has the most restrictive laws in the world against abortion. It is prohibited under any circumstances, even in case of non-viable pregnancy or if the mother's health is in danger. Doctors and nurses bear a huge pressure to comply with the law, in disregard of medical secrecy.
And suddenly the media arrive in front of the hospital because a teenager had a miscarriage in her high school. When she arrives, my priority is obviously to take care of her and make sure she doesn't die. But the media and society point their finger at her without even knowing what happened or if she was raped.
This gynecologist cannot speak freely for fear of being fired.
And then the police show up, and as medics, we don't know how to react. They tell us, "You must collaborate, you must tell us everything, you must file a complaint." And if we are not well informed and aware of our rights, we easily give in to this pressure.
But even in this very religious country, mentalities are changing. Thanks to the work of this association, 62 women condemned for abortion have been released.
For the Salvadoran law, one is considered a person from the moment of conception. So women are not criminalized for abortion, but for homicide with aggravating circumstances. And how do they justify it? Only by doing a DNA test on the fetus or the baby. And they say, "You see, it was the mother who killed her baby. It's infanticide. It's an aggravating circumstance." And they receive 30-year prison sentences.
A judgment of the Inter-American Court of Human Rights has just condemned the Salvadoran state for violating women's health rights. This historic step could set a precedent, so that Salvadoran women who experience an obstetric emergency can be treated instead of being judged.
Earlier in the show, we were telling you about ghost guns in the United States. Well, we'll now take a look at ghost citizens in Brazil. There are more than 3 million of them, people without a birth certificate or ID card. That means, in administrative terms, they don't exist. No access to public health care or education. They also can't vote, and in the run-up to October's elections, they could constitute a potential political force. Our correspondents took a closer look at the legal and social workers trying to help.
In the heart of Rio, José Gomes and Caroline Bezerra patrol in search of children and teenagers in vulnerable situations.
Do you remember when you left school?
At the age of 12.
These 2 brothers, 11 and 13, and not in school, have no identity documents. A common situation in the streets of Rio, where, according to the mayor's office, nearly 10,000 are homeless, a figure seen as an underestimate by this association.
Without documents, it is difficult for them to register at school, to go to the hospital, except maybe for emergencies. They run into all these problems when they try to get off the street and into society.
To help people without identity documents, since 2014 the Rio Court has been running this justice bus. Transformed into a courtroom, volunteer magistrates and social workers help people who want to get their documents in order. People like Lucia da Silva. At the age of 51, this domestic worker has come to get her birth certificate. She's never had one, and all her life it's deprived her of the most basic rights. For her and her daughter, it's an emotional moment.
I've been through so many difficulties without documents.
Because, for example, some of her bosses took advantage of the situation. Because she had no documents. She comes from a poor region. She's illiterate. It's really sad.
I never had a contract. I was like a slave.
Lucia is one of the 3 million Brazilians who, in administrative terms, do not exist. Ghost citizens who, a few months before the presidential elections, do not have the right to vote.
This is a result of misinformation about the importance of documentation and social and economic vulnerability. We get families with many children who live far away without access to transportation, and the whole process is bureaucratic and slow.
In the last 8 years, the Justice Bus volunteers have helped 28,000 people get their documents in order. Like all of them, Lucia has finally become a citizen of Brazil.
I'm going to get my identity card. I'm going to make a contribution for my pension. I'm going to have rights.
With her precious documents in hand, she's now looking forward to learning to read and write, and also, in October's elections, for the first time in her life, to having her say in choosing the president.
And finally, there's always something beautiful about a pregnant woman, but pop star Rihanna goes above and beyond that description. She was the cover girl on this month's American Vogue, resplendent in a fiery red lace bodysuit. The singer has been unapologetic in her fashion-forward maternity wear, saying she wants to help redefine what's considered decent for pregnant women. She tweeted, "It's too much fun to get dressed up. I'm not going to let that part disappear because my body is changing." That's it for this edition. Thanks so much for watching Inside the Americas. We'll see you again next time for all the news from north to south.